Okay, so picture this. You step off the train at Takadano Baba station on the western side of Tokyo's Yamanote Line, 2 stops from Shinjuku, and it just looks normal. An izakaya, a ramen shop, a convenience store, vocational school signs everywhere, students walking with their headphones in, a salaryman finishing a cigarette outside the exit. Nothing here screams interesting. But then you walk a little further and something feels off. The departure chime on the platform, that's the Astro Boy theme. You recognize it immediately, the melody that defined the dawn of Japanese television in the 1960s, now looping through a train station in 2026. Under the tracks, there's a mural, 15 meters wide, 3 meters tall. Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, Blackjack, painted in full color across the concrete. You turn a corner and suddenly there are signs in Burmese, a restaurant serving shan noodles, a grocery store stocking ingredients you'd only find in Yangon, and inside, at the next table, a salaryman eating lunch next to a man who fled a military coup. In this neighborhood, different eras, different cultures, and different countries all end up in the same place. The question is why? The answer isn't simple. 3 separate accidents over the course of 100 years built this city, and all 3 of them happened for exactly the same reason. That's what this video is about. The name Takadano Baba is literal. Baba means horse grounds. Takada is the area name. In 1636, the 3rd Tokugawa shogun, Iemitsu, established a training ground here for his elite samurai, a place to practice yabusame, high-speed mounted archery. It became a place people came to watch, a public spectacle on the edge of Edo. Then nothing happened for 250 years. The land sat quiet, rice paddies, myoga fields, a backwater on the outskirts of the city. What changed it was a man named Okuma Shigenobu. In 1882, Okuma founded the Tokyo Senmon Gakko here, what would eventually become Waseda University, one of Japan's most prestigious private institutions. The reason he chose this location? He had a villa nearby. That was it, a piece of land he already had access to. Students followed the school. Boarding houses followed the students. Cheap restaurants and secondhand bookshops followed the boarding houses. In 1910, a train station opened, Takadano Baba Station, and the neighborhood locked in its identity as a student town. The 1923 Great Kanto earthquake tore through Tokyo. The Shitamachi, the low-lying eastern districts, were destroyed. This area, closer to the higher ground of the Yamanote, was hit less severely. The post-war reconstruction plan reshaped the roads, and the grid you walk today, including the covered shopping street called Sakai Dori, was laid down in that rebuilding. Then, in 1945, the air raids came. The old student quarter around Tsuramakicho was wiped out. After the war, the students shifted west toward Waseda Dori and Sakai Dori. Cheap set meal restaurants came back. Used bookstores came back. The boarding houses came back. That's the neighborhood that exists today. One accident, the location of one man's villa, turned this place into a student town. One night in 1976, a car was driving down Waseda Dori. Osamu Tezuka, the manga artist behind Astro Boy, Kimba the White Lion, Blackjack, was looking for a studio. He'd been living in Shimo Igusa, in Suginami, and the commute was eating into his time. He needed something closer to the center of the city. He'd been searching for a while. Nothing had worked out. That night, he spotted a sign on a building. Tenants wanted. He pulled over, went inside. The interior was raw concrete, empty, not much to look at, but the location was good. The space would work. He signed the lease that night. That building, known as 7 Building on Waseda Dori in Takadanobaba, became the home of Tezuka Productions from 1976 onward. People asked him about it later. Did you choose Takadano Baba because Astro Boy was born here? In the manga, the Ministry of Science is located in Takadano Baba. That's the setting where Adam was created. The answer from Tezuka production staff: completely coincidental. The fiction had come first. The location was an accident. But accidents have consequences. By the 1990s, the area around Takadano Baba station had a reputation problem. It was known as one of the greenier stops on the Yamanote Line. Local merchants wanted to do something about it. They needed a symbol. In 2001, a mural went up under the JR tracks, 15 meters wide. Astro Boy, Kimba, Blackjack, vivid color on concrete that had never had any. The mural wasn't Tezuka Productions' idea. The local shopping street association drove it. Same with the departure chime. Merchants lobbied JR for 2 years to get the Astro Boy theme approved. JR was skeptical. They ran a 2-month trial. The response was overwhelmingly positive. JR asked to keep it permanently. On April 7th, 2003, the date designated in the manga as Astro Boy's birthday, a parade was held in Takadanobaba. An accidental location had become a deliberate identity. On August 8, 1988, the Myanmar military crushed a pro-democracy uprising. The movement is known as the 8888 Uprising, named for the date, the 8th day of the 8th month of the 88th year. Thousands died. Thousands more fled. Some of them eventually made it to Tokyo, and many of them ended up in Takadanobaba. The reason was simple. The Yamanote Line made it easy to find work, and along the Kanda River, there were old wooden apartment buildings with cheap rents, very cheap rents. That was it. That was the whole calculation. The first person found a room and called their friends. Friends called more friends. A restaurant opened. A grocery store stocking Burmese ingredients appeared. The stretch of streets near the Kanda River slowly filled with Burmese script. By around 2007, the area had a name, Little Yangon. Today, there are more than 20 Myanmar restaurants within walking distance of the station, the highest concentration in central Tokyo. But here's something that gets left out of the food blog coverage. Japan's refugee recognition rate is among the lowest in the developed world. Most of the people who came here after 1988 were never officially recognized as refugees. They've lived for decades on provisional visas, a status called Tokute Katsudo. They can't go home, but their legal footing here has always been uncertain. Legal limbo for 30+ years. Then, on February 1st, 2021, the military staged another coup. The community in Takadanobaba, people who had already been waiting for decades, found out they couldn't go back again. Protests started outside the Myanmar embassy in Tokyo. Signature campaigns to cut off funding to the military. Restaurant owners serving lunch in the morning and organizing demonstrations in the afternoon. There are conversations happening at the tables in this neighborhood that most of Tokyo has no idea about. Look at the 3 stories side by side. Okuma Shigenobu built a university here because he had land nearby, land that was accessible, affordable, on the edge of the city. Osamu Tezuka signed a lease here because Takadano Baba in 1976 was not a prestigious address. The rent was manageable. The space was available. The Myanmar community settled here because the wooden apartments along the Kanda River were cheap enough that people with almost nothing could afford them. This neighborhood was built by affordability, not by urban planning, not by government investment, by the simple fact that it was close to the center of the city and cheap enough for people who didn't have many options. Students, artists, refugees, they all ended up here for the same reason. And that reason is now disappearing. The wooden apartment buildings along the Kanda River are being torn down. 2-story structures built in the post-war years, the same buildings that made this neighborhood accessible, are being replaced by new construction with security gates and rising rents. The kind of building that doesn't get rented to someone with a complicated visa status. The kind of building where the cheapest unit costs what used to be the most expensive. The Astro Boy mural will probably stay. The departure chime will probably keep playing. But the soil that made this neighborhood what it is, the affordability that pulled in everyone who had nowhere else to go, that soil is being dug up quietly, one demolition at a time. Nothing about this neighborhood was planned. The shogun placed a horse ground here in 1636 because the land was open. A politician built a university here in 1882 because he had a villa nearby. A manga artist signed a lease here in 1976 because he saw a sign in the dark and pulled over. A community of refugees settled here in the late 1980s because the rent was low enough that they could survive. That's 400 years of accidents. And underneath all of them, the same thing. Not vision, not design. Just the fact that, for a long time, this was a place where people who didn't have many choices could still find a way in. That's rarer than it sounds. And it's getting rarer. If you made it this far, thank you. If you want to see more stories like this from the parts of Japan that don't make it into the travel guides, subscribe. There's a lot more where this came from.